Welcome to the Manx Theatre Podcast.
Come on to the theatre.
Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome back to episode 41 of the Manx Theatre Podcast with me, Neil Callin. Thank you to everyone who's listened to our previous episodes. If you're brand new to the podcast, welcome along and thanks for joining us. In this podcast, we like to try and keep you up to date with what's going on in theatre on the Isle of Man, chatting to the cast and creatives of upcoming shows to find out a little bit more about the shows and the people behind them, and also keeping track of what our Manx-born and bred performers are doing further afield.
Coming up on this week's podcast.
I'm joined by Sue Tummon and Geoff Pugh from the Douglas Choral Union ahead of their upcoming production of Mel Brooks Young Frankenstein, which is playing at the Gaiety Theatre from the 10th to the 18th of February. You can still listen to all of our previous episodes through all the usual podcast outlets and at manxradio.com/podcasts. Whilst you're there, make sure to give us a like and click subscribe or follow or whatever it is you need to do to make sure you never miss an episode. As we start the new year, let's take a look back on what we saw and heard in 2022. The DCU started off the year in February with a wonderful production of Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which saw some fantastic performances from Tony Eccles, Ian Dixon, Jonathan Slight and Leah Carter, who received one of her 2 NODA nominations for Best Actress as Esmeralda. Not forgetting Vic Wilde and Liam Bean, who understudied Esmeralda and Quasimodo, and the wonderful choir led by the amazing Steve Dakin. March saw the Manx Operatic Society present Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, following a week's delay due to what felt like 3/4 of the cast catching COVID the week before the show opened, with the Housewives' favourite David Artis in the title role, and a fabulous performance from Gemma Varnham as Mrs. Lovett. The show also saw a wicked performance from Alex Toohey as the judge, Some Fella as the Beadle, and a wonderful performance from Marie Quinn, who stepped in to play the old beggar woman. A special mention should also go out to Ian Dixon, who, just a few weeks after being on stage in Hunchback, joined the cast as a super sub and filled in a number of small company roles until those members made it back out of isolation and back onto stage. Next up in April, we spoke to the cast of Parados Theatre Company's debut production of Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. This saw some great performances from Peter Wicks, Lisa Smith, Dandy Dancox and Lorcan O'Mahony. Special shout out to Lorcan and his wife Katie, who very recently became parents to a beautiful baby girl. The success of this production means that Charlie and Alex will be back on again on the next episode to talk about this year's production of The Merchant of Venice. In May, we spoke to Chris and Susanna Mabry ahead of Undrama's youth production of Roald Dahl's The Witches. Heading into the summer months, I chatted with the service players ahead of Dick Barton, Special Agent, Three Legs Productions for Once, and Taylorian Productions ahead of 42nd Street. We finished off the year with chats with members of Centre Stage Productions staging of Grease, which just happened to pick up a number of NODA nominations, and the second Best Actress nomination of the year for Leah Carter as Sandy. The service players were back in October for their 80th anniversary production with the staging of Night Must Fall, which was their first ever play way back in 1942, and saw Rachel Martin and David Dawson in the lead roles as Mrs. Bramson and the mysterious Dan. Then, the final episode of the year saw Lisa Kreisky and Chrissy Sutcliffe from Stage Door Entertainment chat to us about elegies for angels, punks and raging queens at the Ballacommunge Studio Theatre, which saw some fantastic performances from each of the 35 performers. There were far too many fantastic performances to pick anyone out, but it was great to see some faces on stage that we've not seen before and will hopefully see a lot more of in the coming years. If you missed any of these episodes, they and all 40 previous episodes are available to listen to wherever you get your podcasts. Across the water, during the Christmas-New Year period, both Damien Neal and Ben Caron saw performances in their respective understudy roles of Javert and Marius in the UK tour and West End productions of Les Mis. Make sure you keep up to date with what's going on between episodes by following Manx Theatre Podcast on both Facebook and Instagram and at Manx Theatre Pod on Twitter. Right, down to business. I'm joined on the podcast today by Sue Tummon and Geoff Pugh from the Douglas Choral Union ahead of their upcoming production of Mel Brooks Young Frankenstein, which is playing at the Gaiety Theatre in just a few weeks' time. Geoff, Sue, welcome to the Manx Theatre Podcast.
Hello, Neil.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Geoff, I should say welcome back, because you were here 18 months or so ago.
Yeah, I'm honoured. I was here with Chrissy Sutcliffe just before Marion, the True Tale of Robin Hood with service players. So yeah, thank you for having me back twice. I mustn't have offended you last time.
Well, not enough anyway. So how did that go? Because you were playing Little John, weren't you?
I was playing Little John. It was fantastic. That was my first lead role since coming back to the island. Service players was who I started back with when I came over here, thanks to Toby Smith, who's an old school friend of mine, and his wife Lisa. So it was a fantastic show, and Chrissy, well, Chrissy's Chrissy. Chrissy was great. It was a great show and great playing opposite her and the rest of the cast. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But we're not here today to talk about Marion.
No.
We're here to talk about Young Frankenstein. This is with the Douglas Choral Union. It's on in a few weeks' time. It's the 8th of February, I think, is opening night. Is that right?
10th to the 18th.
10th to the 18th. I knew there was 8 in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So, for those who've never heard of Young Frankenstein, give us a little bit of an idea of the story behind it.
So Young Frankenstein it's a film. It's a 1974 film. The idea originally came from Gene Wilder. I think it was on the set of Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
And Mel Brooks was obviously involved in that as well. And Gene Wilder spoke to Mel Brooks about an idea he had. He was a big fan of the Frankenstein movies, and he'd had an idea about what if the grandson of Frankenstein really doesn't like the name Frankenstein, doesn't really like what he did, and rallies against it. And obviously the comic genius of Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder spawned what has become a cult film.
Yes.
And they were very insistent from the beginning. In fact, I think they threatened not to make it if they weren't allowed to film it in black and white. Mel Brooks was absolutely, and Gene Wilder were determined to film it and make it like
a proper classic horror film.
like a classic horror film from the 30s.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And they wanted the dodgy zooms, they wanted the camera movements, and all of the credits to look like a 1930s film. And it's become a cult classic.
It is. It's fantastic. So, the general story then?
The general story is Frankenstein's grandson, who is Frederick Frankenstein.
Or Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yes, that's one of the jokes in the show. Frederick Frankenstein, played by the wonderful Tony Eccles. He essentially inherits the castle and has to travel over to Transylvania and discovers his grandfather's lab, his old assistants, some of the staff in the castle, and it's a parody, it's a comedy,
yeah.
It's a real true Mel Brooks comedy
romp,
but with a really lovely story, amazing music, which is all, with the exception of one song, is all Mel Brooks.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's fast paced. It's not that long a show really when you compare it to other shows. The pace is amazing. It really travels along. But yeah, if comedy and music is your thing, then it's absolutely up your street.
And that one exception, then, that'll be Putting on the Ritz.
That would be Putting on the Ritz. Yeah. Famous Irving Berlin song, which was brought into the show and is right in the middle of the second act and is just fabulous.
It's amazing. The tap routine goes at about 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And Geoff gets involved in that as well.
Yes, he
with
does.
his top hat and cane, so props to boot as well.
Oh.
And very, very large Frankenstein monster boots on his feet as well. So he does a sterling job of navigating the routine and all the extra accessories that come with playing the monster.
Yeah, so Geoff, so you're the monster.
I am.
Challenging dialogue?
Yes, I think I've described it quite accurately in my bio for the programme, and that is, in comparison to my last play/show, I've got very little dialogue in this.
Uh-huh.
I've got quite a lot of dialogue in the last scene, but up until that point, I'm mainly grunting, and I'm mainly grunting at Sue. And if you listen and watch carefully, I think you'll probably find about 127 different types of grunts.
Yeah.
So, such is my range. I put so much feeling into all the different grunts.
Yeah.
It's just like Vin Diesel with his many variations on I Am Groot.
Almost exactly like that. Yeah. But not much dialogue for me, which is great, which means I can actually concentrate on trying to... Well, a lot of the comedy is physical in this show anyway, but yes, I'm painted green, I'm on platform shoes, and it's trying not to go over the top with that stuff and rein it back in, because a lot of the comedy is just in what you see.
Yeah.
And particularly, Sue and I have got a great scene together. In fact, we've got a couple of good scenes, but one particular scene, which hopefully the audience will find as funny and as fun and enjoyable as we've had making it, because it's incredible.
So, Sue, then you're playing Elizabeth Benning.
I am, yes. So Elizabeth is the fiancée of
Right.
Frederick Frankenstein. She's an American, she's a socialite, she is probably, it's fair to say, has a very healthy appetite for men, but seems to want to abstain from having any sort of physical contact with her fiancé, Frederick. But it can very easily have her head turned by other chaps in the vicinity. So yeah, I play Elizabeth. She is a very big, very bold character. I'm delighted to have 3 big smashing songs and sort of dance routines in the show as well. They're all very different. They're big sings. The scene that Geoff sort of referred to before is kind of a moment in the show where the monster and Elizabeth sort of, shall we say, cement their interest in one another.
Oh, right.
And Elizabeth goes on to sing a song that's entitled Deep Love. So read into that what you will.
Not an innuendo, but I
It
will.
It is incredibly difficult, not only to sing the song because it's a big sing,
Yeah.
but to sing it when you have an audience of people in a rehearsal room sat in front of you who are absolutely in stitches because of what's going on Geoff's face. So it's incredibly difficult to keep a straight face and sing your way through the song, but it's been amazing fun so
Absolutely.
far, and we're really looking forward to bringing it onto the stage.
Marvellous. So looking at the rest of the cast then, we have got Leah Carter playing Inga.
Yep.
What's Inga's role?
So Inga plays a young woman who ultimately is appointed to the role of the laboratory assistant
Right.
of Frederick Frankenstein, and she is a beautiful young Transylvanian woman who has an enormous amount of allure and appeal, and ultimately her relationship develops
Yeah.
throughout the show with Frederick. And she, again, Leah has got a fantastic role, and she does an absolutely phenomenal job. She has one song where she is on a hayride yodeling, and the range of the song is incredible. And she's quite literally sort of bouncing up and down on a hayride, yodeling, almost atop C. So
Wowzers.
she's phenomenal. She's incredibly talented.
I think that was one of the scenes early on in the rehearsal process. Obviously, when you've got 2 actors like Tony Eccles and Leah Carter, they came to that rehearsal very early on, and they knew the song, they knew the dialogue. And I think that was the first memory I have in the rehearsals of sitting there, and all of us were there. And each time we rehearse up at Onken Methodist, they always do that scene on the stage. And
Yes.
we're all sat around, so we're literally watching it as if it's on stage, and it's the only thing that's happening on stage. And everyone was crying with laughter. There was just tears everywhere, because it's so funny. It's so physical.
Yeah.
How on earth Leah manages to hit the note. And it's not an easy song, is it?
No, not at all. Not at all.
There literally is, as Sue says, there's yodeling in it. And it's just... And they're bouncing along on the hay. It really is amazing.
And it's physical, but not in the sense that, from an audience's point of view, it's just full of innuendo.
Yeah.
It's very, very naughty and very cheeky, and they just translate the humour and the brilliance of that song just remarkably. It's really good.
Innuendo seems to be coming up quite a lot here. It's Mel Brooks, so there's going to be a level of it. I'm guessing that it's probably more suited for a slightly older audience.
Yeah, some of the innuendo isn't innuendo. It's really literally in your face, but it's not. None of it is
Literally.
offensive. Literally in your face. Yeah, none of it is offensive. So I can't think I've seen anything official that says there's an age limit.
Yeah.
You may not want to bring your youngest of children, but certainly,
High school.
early high school, easy, no problem at all. There's no adult themes
Yeah.
in it, and there's very few words that would even raise a teacher's eyebrow.
Yeah. To
But
be
it's-
fair, my 6-year-old son George has been attending lots of rehearsals, and I have, no hesitation in him coming along and sort of enjoying the spectacle that is young Frankenstein. It's naughty and it's cheeky.
Yeah.
It's not offensive.
Yeah, good. So, going back to the cast again then. Frau Blucher, we have Lisa Kreisky. I mean, that is an amazing comedy role, and who better than Lisa for that role?
Absolutely. It's such an interesting character because, there's a lot of facial expression involved with this particular character, and the accent as well. And Lisa is just absolutely deadpan, but then can just, at the flick of a head or a very quick one-liner, bring out this incredible humour and actually a slightly warm side to the character that she plays. The character was played actually in I believe the original West End production by Leslie Joseph.
Yes.
And, I think, if Leslie Joseph saw Lisa's performance, she would be incredibly chuffed because Lisa is just doing such an amazing job with it.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen clips, and I think I've got the West End recording as well with Leslie Joseph in, and I couldn't see anyone else other than Lisa playing that role.
No, it's perfect for her. It is an iconic role. It has pure comedy, but in a deadpan face. If you happen to see the promo video on Facebook, we shot that before Christmas. That was a really long but enjoyable day. You can, even the clips that Lisa does in that promo, you can see the variation in the faces and the mole.
The
Molly. Yeah,
Molly.
it is, yeah. It's and she's great at it, absolutely great.
Wonderful. So then we have David Lyons playing Igor, or is it Igor?
Wow.
Well, which one is it, Neil? Maybe it's both.
Or is no, I'm going to say it's Igor.
Well, we're not going to ruin the surprise.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, there's no surprise. I can't remember which one it is, which way round it is. There's a real obvious joke about it at the beginning when we do the whole Frankenstein, and there's an interplay between David and Tony over that very thing. So I actually can't remember which way round
No,
it
I can't
is.
either. It's one or the other.
Yeah, it is.
It's a bit of both.
Wasn't his grandfather Igor as well? So
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But David is great. That of all of the characters, well, I guess mine's fairly physical, but in a different way. David has got to, obviously there's a hunch, and there's a stoop, and there's a way of walking that comes from the movie, very distinct way that Igor moves, and Dave has really, really practiced that. And again, I remember seeing it for the first time shortly after the auditions, and he's nailed it. And there's so much comedy in just the movement, and in fact, in one of his songs, there's a lot of comedy around the movement. And I think in general day-to-day life, we now have the phrase, walk this way, and that comes from the movie. No, walk this way, and then you drag the heel or you drag a leg. That's from this movie. There's so much in modern parlance that comes from that movie, and that's one of them. So Dave has done an amazing job at bringing Igor to life and deciding which side his hump is on, which is an ongoing joke and theme throughout the show.
And he's still young enough that he probably doesn't need 3 trips to the chiropractor a week to keep him going.
No, he always does complain at the end of a scene when he gets to stand up again. I think any show where you're having to do something different physically. I know he has been really working on his fitness recently, whether that's specifically related to this show or just general life health, I don't know, but he's in good shape, and I think you need it for this because he's quite physical in the role.
Not dissimilar to yourself though, Geoff, because obviously you do.
Well,
there is one moment in the show where there's an enormous pylon and Geoff is effectively at the bottom.
It is an enjoyable pylon, but yes, and not only that, because I fall on the floor twice in the show.
From a great
only
height.
twice?
From a great height,
okay.
yeah. And I actually haven't. So I've very generously was lent a pair of shoes by Mark Britton that he used in Addams Family.
Yes, because he was Lurch, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. And I asked if I could borrow them, and they are. I think he had them done in one of the shops in Douglas, and they are, I think, 5 or 6 inch heels on them, but they are proper leather or rubber,
Yeah.
and they are so heavy. And I wore them for about 2 or 3 rehearsals, and I just couldn't do it because I think they're a little bit higher than the ones I'll actually be wearing,
Yeah.
and they're about 3 times the weight, hopefully, because a lot, especially with the dancing and the falling over. I mean, I'm 6'2" anyway, so when you add 6 inches onto that,
It's a long way to go.
it's a long way to
Yeah.
fall on your bum. So, and then it's a long way to fall on your bum, and then have 3 other people fall on top of you. So, yeah.
Brilliant. So, other members of the cast, then we've got Mark Doherty as Inspector Kemp.
Yes, it's a hilarious role. Mark is brilliant at it. He's got a very unique accent, I think, is probably the best way to describe it. But it adds to the comedy value of the show and of his character. So he plays Inspector Kemp, who is effectively the local policeman in Transylvania. And
Is he a bit of a Van Helsing type character?
Yeah, he's the antagonist of
Yeah.
the show, absolutely.
He effectively is wanting to get to the bottom of what's going on in Castle Frankenstein, or Transylvania, and he's doing some serious world class
Snooping.
Snooping.
Yeah. And I mean, just in that one word, you can imagine Mark Doherty's face.
Yes.
I think he must be one of the finest facial actors. There's no twist and turn that face can't make.
Yeah.
It's quite something to behold. And of course, the other physical characteristic of the character is he is without one leg and one arm. So they are robotic, or they're false limbs. Yeah. Obviously they're not. Mark has all 4 appendages. However, he then has to act them, and he does it miraculously. And in one particular, I think the arm is supposed to be mechanical, isn't it? And there's sound effects to go with it, and it just cracks me up every time. And I've got to be sat there with my eyes closed, unconscious, and I can hear this, and I know it's happening next to me.
You just know what's going on.
It's so difficult not to corpse. Pardon the pun. It's really good.
It must be difficult, actually. A lot of people are very expressive with their arms and their hands, and to know, actually, I can't do that with this arm because that has just got to be robotic. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's his right. Yeah, it's his right arm has very distinct movements.
Yeah.
So keeping your arm to those movements and then expressing everything else about your character with, one functioning leg and one functioning arm, and the facial expressions to go. And I think the costume for it is quite distinctive as well. So I think, when we start to see the stage photos, and I think he will feature quite prominently because it's a great outfit and a great character. And
it sounds like there's a whole lot of choreography outside of the normal choreography for the whole piece, with the different walks and the styles and the
I think there is. I think of all of the characters I think the only character who doesn't have unique movement in some way is probably Tony's character, Dr. Frankenstein. Everyone else in some way has got some physical performance to make because of the character. And that's a challenge in itself.
And I think that's sort of down to the fact that it is, that sort of parody of an American comedy horror film. Everything is deliberately exaggerated for comedy effect. So, the facial expressions, the movements,
the damsel in distress.
Very much so.
Yeah, although having said that, Scott, who's the director, is very, very keen on the comedies in the script.
Yeah.
The comedies in the script, don't over-egg it.
Yeah.
Get through the script, move on,
Keep the
on.
pace.
Keep the pace, because we're all putting hopefully good performances in and keeping the pace. The comedy will come. So I don't think although there is lots of physical comedy in it, we're not sending ourselves up.
No.
The genre is sending up
Yes.
Frankenstein, and
Correct.
it's in the script rather than us having to overact it.
It was the same with Spamalot as well. There's no point trying to ad-lib and improve on what's there. That it's tried and tested. It's Monty
Absolutely.
Python. What's written is perfect and has been honed.
It's golden.
Yeah, it's golden. Yeah, there's no point trying to improve on it. Just do what's there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So the final member of the principal cast then is Mike Bonner, who's playing the Hermit.
Yes, and brilliant at it he is as well. I'll let you. I mean, you do the wonderful scene with him, so I'll let you talk about that, Geoff.
Yeah, for someone who doesn't say very much in this show, I do get some of the amazing scenes, and I get to play opposite Mike Bonner, who is playing the blind man, the hermit, and everyone will have seen actors who are playing blind characters, and there's a very specific way of moving or not moving your eyes. Mike has obviously studied that because
so
he does it
authentic.
really well. And that's, you might think, okay, fine, the character's blind, how important is that? But the comedy in our scene, the hermit scene, is very much to do with the fact that he's blind.
Yeah.
And like with a lot of comedy, it's in the detail and doing it over and over and over again. And the scene is about pace and it's about precision. And he's got a song in it which is fabulous
Which is
as
beautiful.
well. Yeah,
It's actually quite a
it
heart-wrenching
is.
song.
Yeah, which I utterly destroyed by crashing through the door at the end of it. But it's a magical little scene. Mike's got a fabulous voice, as you know.
Yeah.
So listening to him sing it and perform it, and he's got that rich tone to his voice as well. Yeah, it's a wonderful scene.
Brilliant. So they're looking at the ensemble, and there's quite a big ensemble as well, isn't there? But also, I mean, I've done a few shows with the DCU, so there's a lot of well-known names here, like Georgia Krishnan, Jess McManus, we've got Hannah Williams, we've got Gary Corkle, Chris Jagus, Bryony Grant, Andrew Dayton, there's Bobby Graham. There's people that's done lots of shows with DC, but there's also a few names here that are fairly new to me as well. So I'm guessing there's some nice new people in there this year as well.
Yeah.
Actually, you're both new to the DCU as well, so you probably don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
I've done one DCU show before.
I've almost done one DCU show. It was quite funny actually. I was supposed to be in, and I did start auditions with the rehearsals with Hunchback.
Right.
Unfortunately, I had to pull out just before Christmas with a family member who wasn't very well, and when we cast for Young Frankenstein, my very first rehearsal was a singing rehearsal with Tony Eccles. And of course Tony was in Hunchback, and I went into him. He was like, "Oh, Geoff, nice to see you, Tony." And he sort of turned to me very seriously and went, "So you're actually going to make it to stage with this one?" So yes, exactly, yeah, a couple of weeks to go. But yeah, the cast, the ensemble, I'm always in awe of the ensemble anyway, because they've got to know every song, know every dance, sing and dance together, which I find amazing.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of the ensemble pieces in this. There's a lot of movement, whether it's the tap in the Ritz, Transylvania Mania. There's some big numbers which have huge dances associated with them and real spectacles right from the opening scene. You know, the opening scene is The Brain. It's one of my favourite songs of the show. The dance and the movement is incredible. So, yeah.
And on top of that as well, the ensemble have some particularly challenging harmonies to navigate their way through.
Oh, start the second act.
Yeah, there's some sort of 4 or 5 part harmonies.
Yeah.
And I mean, they sound amazing, but there's some deliberate clashes in there, you know.
Yeah.
And Liz has been working really, really hard, and the ensemble have worked incredibly hard to pull together some absolutely brilliant sounding numbers. You know, really big noise and top quality. They've done a really good job. And as Geoff says, whilst in lots of the scenes, moving, you know, shifting furniture, you know, dancing, all sorts. So they really are all things to all aspects of this show.
So that's Liz Dixon then back as MD. Yes.
And
is she going to be in the pit waving the hands as well?
She is.
Marvellous.
Thankfully, yes.
I think it was Shrek. I think it was, and as much as time as I spent watching people on stage, I was watching Liz in the pit just boogieing away.
She's brilliant, and she keeps everyone going. She keeps the momentum moving. I know that's the role of a musical director, but the enthusiasm and the energy that you see when you look at Liz, it keeps the momentum, it keeps the pace moving forwards. Yeah,
I mean, she really does move. When we hit the theatre, she moves from the musical director role into the conductor. So she's not just conducting the orchestra. In a lot of ways, she's conducting the cast through the musical numbers. And like with any musical, timing is everything. Coming off the notes at the right time, you know, just makes it neat and sound and look professional. And Liz is all about that, and she drills all of us pretty hard, because that really is the, you know, if you're looking for the finishing touches to a show to make it really look slick, that's where you get that extra 10% from, and she's always on top of it for that.
Yeah,
And I
when
think
when
we
she's
should-
when she's in teacher mode as well.
Well, yeah,
Have you had the stare?
a few times, but it's only when necessary.
Deployed.
Yeah.
When it's been deserved.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we should also probably acknowledge the booth singers as well, because they really, they come along to the vast majority of rehearsals where we're doing pretty much a run through of an act or the full show, and they're not party to the full production side of things, but they come along, and their energy and their sound and their, the quality of their singing each and every time is fantastic, and it really elevates every single number that they're involved in.
Gives a bit of oomph.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Brilliant. So this is Scott's first production with the DCU, but he has been on the island before because he has done 4 or 5 shows with the Manx Operatic. So he did Hot Mikado, Titanic, Anything Goes, and Grand Hotel, and I think there was another one, but I can't think what it is off the top of my head right now. But so he's no stranger to the Isle of Man and the Gaiety, so he knows how things work. So how's he found working with the DCU?
Well, you'd probably have to ask him how he finds it with the DCU in general. But certainly from our perspective, he's been over. We've done. Is it one set of blocking or 2? One.
2.
We've done 2. Yes. Sorry, done 2,
Yeah.
and we're doing another week of blocking the week before Tech. He's been great. He knows. Obviously, he's the director. He knows what he wants to see, but there's a lot of latitude in you bringing the performance. He knows where he wants you to stand. He wants you to look this way. He wants you to interact and cross over there, and there. But within the character, there's lots of
There's a lot of freedom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
If he doesn't like something that you're doing,
he'll tell
he
you.
will tell you. He'll let you know. But that's the really wonderful thing about working with Scott, is he will give you some placement and that sort of thing, but let you work through the character and see what works and what doesn't work, and it's nice to have that freedom, really.
And when he gives you notes, that they're not very specific notes about the thing that you should do. He's always thinking, well, what's going on here, and how would someone in that position talking to that person react? And we want to create this atmosphere, so how would we? So from my perspective, the grunter in the crowd, the notes and the direction have been quite. We're given quite a lot of latitude to characterise ourselves.
Just thinking, what are you thinking when you're grunting in that way, Geoff?
Well, it's a
Probably best
process.
not to ask.
It's a process.
You're listening to the Manx Theatre Podcast with Neil Callin.
Last time you were on, Geoff, we found out all about you, but let's find a little bit more about Sue. So how did you get started? What was it that first sort of got you onto the stage?
My parents sent me to ballet lessons when I was 3, and so I spent sort of my early years doing lots of dance school shows and productions and things.
Was that with the Christine Wilde?
No, that was before I moved to the island, actually.
Oh, right, okay.
So I moved to the island in 1991. And actually the year before I moved over was my first sort of real, I guess, foray onto the stage in a musical, and it was Captain Stirrick with the National Youth Music Theatre on the Edinburgh Festival. And the role I played was a young girl called Peg, and my brother was actually played by Stephen Graham of Pirates of the Caribbean and Snatch, and
now
most
Matilda.
recently Matilda, the musical.
Fantastic actor, love Stephen Graham.
Yeah, he's phenomenal. And so I did a couple of shows with the National Youth Music Theatre, came over to the island, and then joined the Christine Wilde Theatre School and did countless productions with her over the years.
Did I imagine it, or did you play Dorothy at one point with Christine?
I did, yes.
Also.
I did play Dorothy, yes. And my mum made my costume for the Wizard of Oz, yeah. And then I did sort of, from Christine sort of introducing me to other companies that were coming over to the island, either for summer seasons or for Christmas season. I did pantomime. I played Wendy in Peter Pan, and had the experience of flying high above the Gaiety stage, and various other sort of productions over the years. But actually, when it comes to the mainstream societies on the island, I've done a couple of shows with the service players back in the day.
Yes, actually, I was listening back to Geoff's episode this afternoon just to think what I'd asked him last time, and I realised you've both been in a production of The Boyfriend.
There we are, correct.
That's right.
Yes, yeah, you did it at, was it King Bill's, was it?
Yes, yeah, that would have been probably 92 or 93 maybe. I played Lord Brockhurst in The Boyfriend, yeah.
Well, I think my character was called Polly Brown, and I played opposite Housewife's favourite
David Artis.
Yes. So I did service players, and then I did The Sound of Music with the DCU, and then most recently I did Les Mis with Manx just a few years back, and I understudied Fantine and got to play that role a couple of times, so that was incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's been lots of singing and lots of dancing and stuff over the years. It's been
Marvellous.
great fun.
I mean, you had a bit of a gap because you moved to Singapore for a while, didn't you?
I did, yeah. So, and I have to say, actually, when I came back from, I was in Asia for almost 9 years, and it wasn't long after doing The Sound of Music that I left and moved overseas, and I came back to find the standard and the quality of production and the investment of time and energy and everything about the musical theatre scene on the Isle of Man had elevated itself to a completely different level.
2004 to 2010, there was a huge difference. Sort of prior to 2004, some of it was still quite church hall-y. I think there was just quite a successful period of good directors and musical directors coming
shows,
in, and amazing shows that
Miss
come
Saigon
in.
and Phantom and Cats.
Les Mis.
Exactly. So, coming back to the island then and wanting to sort of re-immerse yourself into that kind of world of arts and culture here, it was incredibly exciting, but also incredibly daunting.
Yeah.
Because everyone's so good at what they do.
Yeah.
So
can I still do it?
Yeah, that's the thing. So actually, I did audition for a few things. I get absolutely racked with audition nerves. And
hate them.
Yeah, puts the fear of God into me every single time. But it worked out this time with Young Frankenstein, and yeah, it's so exciting to be involved with the DCU in this production.
Brilliant. What's the favourite role that you've played?
Favourite role? Well, I'd have to say, although I was understudy, I have to say Fantine and Les Mis. That was a dream come true. I dreamed a dream.
It's a bucket list ticked, isn't it?
Big time.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
So talking about bucket lists then, what is the dream role? What is the one role that you are itching to play?
Do you know, I would absolutely love to play the character played by Meryl Streep in the movie, Donna Sheridan in Mamma Mia.
Oh, yes.
I just think that it's such a vibrant, fun musical with all the ABBA music, the influence of that. I just think that would be, I'm the right age to play that kind of a character nowadays, so I'm in that bracket.
Yeah. The parent roles, it comes to us all, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But yeah, that would be the most fun, the most exciting. I'd love to play that role.
Do you know, and it's been out for a long time now, so surely it's only a matter of time. I mean,
fingers crossed.
It sounds like a Taylorian type summer show, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, could be. Yeah. Could well be.
Could be. Well, we'll have to bend Matt James's ear and see what we can do. There's a question that I used to ask, and I haven't asked for a long time, but if we kind of put age, race, ethnicity, sexual preference, whatever, to one side, what is the one role that you would love to play? And it doesn't matter which gender, which age. Because obviously, there are new shows that have come out in the last 20 years that we're no longer old enough or the right age to play that teenage role. The Dear Evan Hansons, the Jamie, and is there a role like that you're too old for now, or you're the wrong build, whatever, for that you would love to play?
I mean, yeah, taking all of what you've just said into account, being the wrong age and the wrong build and all of that sort of stuff. Correct gender, but actually the role I always wanted to play when I was younger was Christine in Phantom.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was very much into my ballet. I loved ballet. I loved classical singing. That was kind of my initial training when I was doing singing lessons in my earlier years. And I just used to always be going around the house singing songs from Phantom. So yeah, that ship has long sailed, but that would be the one for me.
What about you, Geoff? Being 6'4" and a strapping man, is there a role that's that isn't suitable for you as a person to play, but is one that you would love to hit?
Well, given how you've just described me, I think any role. can't remember. I think you may have asked this question last time or similarly, and I can't remember what I said. I don't really. There isn't one particular role that I really want to play because of a particular song or a particular show. My roots are predominantly in comedy. That's where I feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I'd love to do some more serious stuff as well, but I guess any comedy role, and if gender, shape, size, talent, or anything else
vocal range
was off the table, then there's too many. I couldn't particularly pick one. Sorry.
Put you down as a Mary Poppins, maybe?
Go for Mary Poppins.
Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I heard him say Mary
I mean,
Poppins.
DCU are doing a Vita next, so maybe Eva Peron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Up on the balcony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make my pitch here.
Yeah.
Right. So over the years, we've all done shows with varying budgets, and costumes have been better in some than others. What would you say is the best and possibly the worst costume that you've ever had to wear?
Oh. I'm going to say the best costume, thanks to my wonderful mother, was my Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz blue and white gingham frock. I'm going to say my worst costume was my curtains, my dress made of curtains in The Sound of Music. Did absolutely nothing. Pattern aside, it was undesirable.
Well, perfect. Geoff, now you mentioned last time that it was your many layers of furs that you wore as Little John was possibly the worst with the heat and weight.
Yeah, absolutely. And the shows I've done, the plays I've done with service plays so far have all been summer shows. And I know it's hot on stage and backstage all throughout the year in the Gaiety, but that was particularly... And that role as well was very was very physical. I was all over the place and, again, fighting and falling on the floor. It seems to be a theme. So whilst the costume was a great costume, it was probably the worst because of the sweat.
Yeah.
And that didn't get any better, really, I've got to say, with my service players outing this year, because...
last year now.
Oh gosh, yeah, we're 2023 now, aren't we? Oh my word. Yes, last year, 2022, and we did Dick Barton, and I played Baron Scarhart, the arch nemesis to the titular role, and
Not that the name would give it away at all.
no. And again, I borrowed it from Alex Brindley of this parish, and he lent me. He, for some reason, has got a almost down to the floor black leather jacket, and which I wore over the top of a leather waistcoat, and it was boiling. So getting hot and sweaty seems to be a theme with me and my roles.
At least in the Gaiety these days, there's a lot of LED lighting, so there isn't quite the
Yes.
same amount of heat from the grid that there used to be.
No, that is true. That is true. And in terms of best costume, I'm actually probably going to say this show, because the costume is great, and I've got a couple of, for the first time for me actually, a couple of quick changes to deal with as well, which are going to be challenging because I've got
Huge hands.
huge hands. So that's going to be, and we haven't done those yet. So roll on Tech Week. But for me, obviously, I've got to wear. Well, I say obviously. You look at me, and maybe you'd think I don't, but I've got to have quite an elaborate prosthetic on my. What are you laughing at, Neil?
And it's green.
It's green. And
This is on your head, yes.
It's on my head, my head. Yes,
Just glad we established that.
that's another line in the
Yeah,
show
that is another.
which we were going to. But yeah, so this is the first time any show I've done. I had to go and have a makeup test, and Jude Fullerton and her wonderful team looking after me and doing the makeup test. I think the first time we did it, it was 2.5 hours to get it on, and obviously they were testing out the different shades and everything else.
It's
But that's
unbelievable.
it
is
looks
so
great.
good.
It looks great.
Yeah.
I know that they're being really careful on a lot of the photographs that they took on the promo. They're trying to hold some of them back. I think
Yeah.
they want the monster look to be one of the last things that you see, or even on the stage, because it's that good. You know, it's a good couple of hours in the seat.
Did you have like a full sort of head mould taken to have it done, or was it?
No, I didn't have to have that done. Fortunately, for those who have seen me recently or know me, I'm similar to yourself, a shaven head.
Follically challenged. And a nice smooth schwad. And so it just sits on the top. And actually, from a heat perspective, it's only siliconed in on the front and the side. Right.
Because I've got hair at the back, so it's left dangling at the back. So I've got a little bit of air to get in the back. But even still, with all of that and then blending it in, it looks incredible.
It's going to get warm as well.
It is going to be warm, yes. I had a conversation with Jude earlier this week about ice packs and ice vests and all of that kind of stuff, and I've got to start the sweat stop. For those who know what that is, it's the product to stop you sweating. I think I'm starting that a week before Tech Week, because it's obviously more effective the earlier that you start to use it.
Yeah.
So I'm starting that a week before Tech Week so that I don't melt or don't sweat the prosthetic off.
Yeah, Jonathan and Ian had a bit of a nightmare in Shrek, and also when we did Spamalot, Jack Divers as Patsy had this lovely little leather cowl.
Yes.
And of course it just sweats. Oh, you get hot because you're dancing around. He's got a big rucksack on as well all the way through. But then it just doesn't evaporate through the leather skull cap. It just stays there.
And the last thing you want, as you all know, is you don't want the sweat going into your eyes.
Yeah. Taking makeup with it.
Taking makeup with it, yeah. So, yeah, from a costume and a makeup perspective, I think this will be probably the most challenging, but the best that I've done so far as well.
Brilliant. Okay, gender swap then. This is the fun one. I think you answered this one last time, but so this one then, Sue. This is just for you. So, if you could play any part of the opposite gender, what would it be?
Well, I'd have to say the monster in Frankenstein, because now having been through 5 months of rehearsals with my esteemed friend here, Mr. Pugh, he delivers an absolute masterclass in how to play this role, and I'd love to be 7 foot tall, however many feet wide monster that effectively steals every scene of the show. I mean, what a dream role.
Brilliant. Well, I can't wait to see it. Right, so then the final thing then is our Spotify playlist. Following the COVID lockdown back in 2020, we set up our Spotify playlist. The idea was to create the ultimate musical theatre playlist. Neil King and I, we put 10 songs into the playlist each, just to get it started, because no one really wants to listen to a playlist with 2 songs. So every guest that we've had on since we set it up has added a song to the playlist. Looking back at the list we've got Tony Eccles. He added When I Grow Up from Matilda. Geoff, last time, he added You'll Be Back from Hamilton. Lisa Kreisky added Marilyn Monroe from Blood Brothers. And Liz Dixon added Raise Your Voice from Sister Act. So, Sue, which song would you like to add and why?
I am going to add All That Matters from Finding Neverland.
Ooh, lovely.
And the reason I'm going to add that is I just think it's an incredibly powerful song with really beautiful lyrics. And there's one particular line that stands out, and it is, all that matters now is where I go from here. There's an easier way if I live for today. The singing in my heart is all that matters. And I just think that is absolutely perfect.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, that's my choice.
Wonderful. Well, Geoff, Sue, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. Young Frankenstein is running at the Gaiety Theatre from the 10th to the 18th of February. If you haven't done so already, make sure you get your tickets now from villagaiety.com, the Welcome Centre, or by calling 600 555. Sue, Geoff, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast, and wish you and everyone involved at the Douglas Choral Union all the very best for your run of Mel Brooks Young Frankenstein. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Neil.
You're listening to the Manx Theatre Podcast.
Right, we've looked back on 2022. Now let's look forward to what's coming up in 2023. As we've just mentioned once or twice, the DCU's production of Young Frankenstein is first out of the blocks in February. The Manx Operatic Society follow up close behind with Annie Get Your Gun at the Gaiety in March from the 18th to the 25th. April will see the return of the Mad for Easter Festival of Plays at the Gaiety Theatre after a 3-year break due to COVID restrictions. This year, however, sees a slight change to the format and sees a mix of both full-length and one-act plays in a combination of the one-act festival and the Festival of Full-Length Plays. This is the first time that I'm aware that the One Acts will run at the Gaiety, so this is an exciting opportunity for those who don't normally get to perform there. The festival runs at the Gaiety Theatre from the 8th to the 14th of April. Two Feathers Productions are putting on, or should that be, displaying the full Monty at the Gaiety from the 15th to the 22nd of July. Then we've got Taylorian Productions bringing us Kinky Boots from the 2nd to the 12th of August, with I'm sure what will be another great Sunday night at the Gaiety on the 6th of August. Centre Stage round off the year for now, until the pantomime is announced, with Elf the Musical in November. Tickets for all of the above are either on sale now or will be shortly, and available through the relevant sites for each venue. I'm sure there'll be many more productions, including a couple from the service players that have not yet been announced, and you can be sure I'll aim to chat with as many of them as I can. Across the water, some of our locals are heading into new productions. Matt Overfield will be in Mrs. Doubtfire at London's Shaftesbury Theatre from the 12th of May, and Perry O'D will be appearing as Angie the Ox in Guys and Dolls at the Bridge Theatre, alongside Daniel Mays and Cedric Neal from March through to September, and Ben Caron will continue in Les Mis. And Sam Barks also continues as Elsa in Frozen. Sam also has a solo concert at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane on the 30th of May. So if you can get to London, check those out. Well, with that, we bring episode 41 to a close. Thanks once again to Sue and Geoff for joining me on the podcast, and we wish them and all at the Douglas Choral Union all the very best for Mel Brooks Young Frankenstein, which is running at the Gaiety Theatre from the 10th to the 18th of February. If you haven't done so already, make sure you get your tickets now. Remember to like and follow our social media pages to get notifications of upcoming episodes and events. Don't forget to check out our Spotify playlist by searching for Manx Theatre Podcast, and that's all one word. There's over 60 tracks and over 4.5 hours of show tunes for you to listen to and enjoy. If you have any events that you'd like us to talk about or promote in a future episode, you can contact us through our social media accounts or by email to manxtheatrepodcast@gmail.com. All that remains is to say thanks for listening, and I hope you join me again next time. I've been Neil Callin, and you've been listening to the Manx Theatre Podcast. Goodbye.
The Manx Theatre Podcast, taking a look behind the scenes of Manx Theatre.
And actors alive for me.